Perspective on what was a very eventful weekend in the race for the nomination with Melik Abdul, Republican strategist, right here in D.C., joining us here on the Final Five. Melik, good to see you again.
Jim, thanks for having me. Let's talk politics.
Let's do that. Yeah, I want to get your take right now because, look, I think when you look at the polls, it's Trump 65%, Haley at about 30% here in her home state of South Carolina as that primary nears. Is there a purpose, do you believe, for her remaining in the race at this point?
Well, I think there are probably, from Haley's perspective, three reasons. One, I believe she wanted to make it to her home state. South Carolina is the last state before we get to Super Tuesday, which is typically when the elections, the nominations are for both parties, are essentially chosen. But she wants to get to her home state. She also wants to get enough delegates in the event something at some point possibly happens to Donald Trump on the legal front. She wants to be able to step in and say that she has a number of delegates. But the third reason, I would argue, is that Nikki Haley realizes that the vice presidency is no longer in the cards for her. So she's running the race that many people hoped other candidates would run against Donald Trump.
Clearly, as we saw, I was looking at just some of the trends, and people were all wondering who the benefactor was going to be when DeSantis dropped out of the race, and clearly it was Donald Trump. And when you look at the race that he's running in 2024 versus 2016 and 2020, are you seeing similarities, or is this a different Trump you're seeing on the campaign trail?
I think this is Trump will be Trump. There's very little about Donald Trump at his age that will probably change. But I think that Donald Trump is in an interesting position because he's not an incumbent, but he's running as if he were the incumbent. And it's a very strange thing in our politics. It really doesn't happen. But I think that Donald Trump, after probably Super Tuesday, which was just when a third of the delegates will be chosen, I think that Donald Trump probably, at least I'm hoping, will shift into more of a campaign mode where he's talking about actual policies, the thing that he's going to do moving forward, as opposed to relitigating what has happened in the past.
You know, on that note, I feel as though when you look at the crowds at his rallies, and he's drawing crowds once again, like we saw over the weekend in South Carolina, you know, that is red meat. Those are good lines. That's what fires up a lot of Trump voters in a lot of those states where it is sort of a quote unquote revenge tour for 2020.
Yeah, but that's not going to win Trump the White House, though, because it just can't be a revenge tour. He's going to have to actually paint a vision forward, which is why I think that it's who he chooses as his vice president probably will be a very important decision, because it will actually paint a picture for what not just these 4 years would look like, but what life after Donald Trump would look like. So that's why I'm all in for Tim Scott, because Tim Scott is younger, and I think that he could be a vision forward for the country. But Donald Trump has to be concerned about his personality. You have to, at least at the end of the day, almost like the person that you're voting for. And in many ways, Donald Trump has made himself objectionable to people. So he has to worry about that and getting those votes that he'll need in order to win.
And there were a lot of people in states like, Pennsylvania, maybe Georgia, who are looking at what the last week was like for the Biden White House. Where you had that report come out from the special counsel, and somebody made the observation, you have Biden exonerated, if you want to call it that, of those classified documents charges, and he's facing more backlash than Trump has for the indictments that he's facing at this point. But again, there have been a lot of people still playing that age issue and looking at Joe Biden and saying, are the Democrats running the wrong person here?
It is absolutely shocking, if you look at the polls, how much better Donald Trump does on that very front. And this isn't just with Republican voters. These are independents and Democrats who actually see Donald Trump as a much stronger mentally president. It is absolutely shocking with Donald Trump in his 4 indictments that he's leading Joe Biden on any number. But when it comes to his mental fitness, when it comes to the ability to handle the economy, Donald Trump is literally leading on that. And I think that people are seeing a very diminished Joe Biden. And when you have the paper of records, the Washington Post and the New York Times now talking about it as an issue, it's something that Democrats have to be concerned about, because they don't have a strong number 2 in Kamala Harris. If he felt like his vice president were stronger, I have no doubt that Joe Biden would not be running. It would be the transitional president that he promised to be.
Yeah, definitely a change in what the approach was going to be if there was going to be a Biden term 1 and what would happen to a Biden term 2. Melik, Appreciate the insight. Always good to see you. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Some of the stories you may have missed.